They called me 91 for 6 years before I heard my own name out loud again. And when I finally did, it didn't come from a guard or a judge or anyone who owed me the courtesy. It came from a piece of dead stone that had refused every hand on Galt's hollow before mine. I should say what the hollow was, for anyone who never had the misfortune. It was a penal moon, gray and airless on the surface, its only value the seam of alien ruin buried under the regolith, like a bone under old snow. The authority ran a labor colony on top of it and called the ruin the cut, because that was what we did to it, day after day, with picks and lasers and our bare gloved hands. Every man on the cut wore a collar. The collar didn't hurt you. It didn't need to. It sanded down the edges of you instead, clipped your memory at the root, dulled your name until it stopped meaning anything, even to yourself. You became your number. I became 91. I had been Corin Vale once, a foreman on a border station, convicted of something I still can't fully picture through the fog the collar left behind. It didn't matter what. What mattered was that after enough years wearing a number, you start to believe the number is what you are. We worked the vaulted hall 300 meters down, where the alien roof rose so high our lamps couldn't find the top of it. Rows of dead pillars stood in the dark like a congregation waiting on a sermon that never came. The stone up there wasn't like anything native to the hollow, smooth where the rest of the moon was jagged, cold in a way that felt deliberate. The engineers dug it for salvage, plating, wiring, anything that could be sold off-world, and over the years they'd pulled dozens of small things out of the rubble, coins, fragments, a carved idol no bigger than a fist. None of it had ever done more than sit where it was put. And, 11 months before I'm telling you this, the orb. It came out of a collapsed alcove near the eastern wall, smooth and dark as wet slate, small enough to sit in 2 cupped palms, its surface cut with fine glyphs that caught the lamplight and threw it back cold. The engineers ran every test they had on it. They passed it hand to hand, foremen, technicians, even the warden himself, once, for a photograph nobody ever printed. It did nothing. No warmth, no light, no hum. Dead weight. After a month they stopped testing it and put it on a shelf in the equipment shed where the night crew kept their gear, and it sat there collecting dust like anything else that had failed to be useful. I want to be honest about how ordinary that night was. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd finished a double shift hauling debris, and my hands were raw enough that I couldn't feel the difference between stone and skin anymore. The shed was empty. I sat on an upturned crate to wait out the last 20 minutes before the walk back to the barracks, and the orb was there on the shelf at eye level, the way it had been for months, ignored the way I was ignored. Both of us cataloged and set aside. I picked it up because it was closer than anything else to rest my hands on. That's all. No reverence in it. No ceremony. I held it the way you hold something heavy when your arms are too tired to hold themselves. Against my chest, both palms flat on its surface, my forehead nearly touching it, breathing. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't thinking about the number. I don't know how long I sat like that. Long enough that my breathing slowed to match some rhythm I wasn't setting. Long enough that I noticed, distantly, the stone had stopped feeling cold. The glyphs woke first, a thin vein of pale light tracing itself along the seams of the carving, faint as a heartbeat seen through skin. I should have dropped it. Every man on that crew would tell you he'd have dropped it. I didn't. I don't fully know why, except that whatever was waking up in my hands didn't feel like a threat. It felt like something remembering how to stand. The light spread until the whole orb glowed the color of a winter sky, just before the sun clears it, and warmth came off it, in slow pulses, like it was breathing too. I heard the shed door swing. Pharaoh, the night overseer, come to check the crew roster, stopping dead in the frame with his lamp raised. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, while the thing in my hands kept waking. It didn't speak the way you'd expect a voice to. It arrived more like a thought that wasn't mine, settling into the space behind my eyes, quiet and unhurried, with no interest in being dramatic about it. Corin Vale, not 91. I felt my legs go out from under me before I understood why. I ended up on my knees on the shed floor with the orb still cradled against my chest, and Pharaoh still hadn't moved, and somewhere behind him 2 more men from the crew had gathered in the doorway, drawn by the light spilling out into the dark. It said it again, not louder, just steadier, like it was making sure the words had somewhere solid to land. Corin Vale, not 91. I hadn't heard my own name from anything but the inside of my own skull in 6 years, and even there it had gone thin and unreliable, a word I wasn't sure I trusted anymore. To hear it from something that owed me nothing, that had refused 100 other hands before mine, and had no reason on any world to choose me, that broke something open in my chest that the collar had spent 6 years trying to seal shut. I want to tell you it explained itself. It didn't. Not with words. What I understood the way you understand weather. Not through argument, but through the fact of it settling over you. The hall above us hadn't been a vault for treasure. It had been a listening place, built by whoever carved those pillars, meant to hold a single small thing that could tell the difference between a person and everyone the world had tried to reduce a person to. It hadn't woken for engineers, or wardens, or men with clean records, because none of them had needed it to. It had been waiting, the way a door waits, for someone who no longer knew his own name to ask for it back without asking at all. Pharaoh found his voice before I found mine. 91, he started, out of habit, and then stopped himself, because even he could hear how small the number sounded next to what was glowing in my hands. I didn't stand for a long moment. I stayed on my knees on that cold floor with the orb's light fading slow and even, like a held breath finally let out, and I let myself feel the whole weight of 6 years landing at once, not as grief, not as rage at what had been taken, but as the plain, quiet fact of having been found. Nobody handed me a crown. Nobody promised me a kingdom waiting somewhere past the wire. I was still a convict on a mining moon, with a collar around my throat and a debt to serve. But I wasn't a number anymore, not to myself, and that turned out to matter more than I would have guessed. They took the orb from the shed the next morning, under armed escort, cataloged it, argued over it, eventually shipped it off-world to people who wanted to understand what it was. I never got it back, and I never asked to. It had done the one thing it came to do. They still call me 91 in the duty logs, the collar's still on my neck, dulling what it dulls. But at night, in the barracks, when the lights go down and the others are asleep, I say my own name out loud, just once, the way you'd check that a door was still there behind you. Corin Vale, not 91. It answers back the same way every time, not as an order, not as a title, just as a fact. The way the ground holds a foundation, whether or not anyone remembers what was built on it. I don't know what becomes of a man who's been told the truth by something 4 times as old as his whole species. I only know I stopped flinching at my own number after that night, because I finally understood it had never been the truest thing about me. It was only ever the thing they'd hung around my neck. The name underneath it had been waiting the whole time, patient as stone, for someone old enough and honest enough to say it back to me. Some of the men on the crew ask me about it still, quiet, when the overseers aren't near. They want to know what it felt like, being chosen by something that old. I tell them it didn't feel like being chosen at all. It felt like being remembered, a smaller thing to say, and a much larger thing to carry. I'll carry it the rest of my days without complaint, because it's mine, and because, for the length of 1 glowing hour in a dark shed, something old enough to have outlasted every empire this side of the stars still knew exactly who I was.